Is the West on the verge of collapse?
Well, it's certainly not looking too healthy. It seems to have a kind of death wish. I mean, for decades, its leading light, its intelligentsia, has been taking a kind of wrecking ball to its core institutions and its core values, on the basis that very explicitly that the West is said to be, fundamentally a bad thing. It was allegedly born in the original sins of colonialism and racism and exploitation and being white-skinned. And consequently, it had to be kind of undermined and replaced by the brave new world of the brotherhood of man, international law, international human rights, international transnational institutions, the United Nations, International Criminal Court, International Court of Justice, sainted European Union, and so on and so forth. This has had a tremendous effect, and I think it has absolutely eroded the West to the point that the West, quite self-evidently now, does not wish to and doesn't have the means to defend itself against outside predators, outside enemies. It's let its defences wither away. Partly because, it's wanted to spend its money on, welfare stuff, but also because I think it's a culture which has basically totally assimilated the famous lyric of John Lennon, nothing to fight or die for. We're all living in a world of imagine, where there are no divisions and nothing to fight or die for, but we have created divisions. This is the paradox. On the basis that the nation is the source of all bad things. It's the source of prejudice and war and conflict because it's exclusive, because it is itself a nation, it's particularist, and consequently is separate from other similar nations. That was a bad thing because that created division. And so we have this universalist philosophy based on human rights, the individual, what I'm entitled to. And that's supposed to produce a brave new world without prejudice or conflict. But in fact, what it's produced, because it's a rights-based culture, it's produced a society which is no longer a society. It's actually a confederation of competing groups, groups set up to issue demands for their rights, groups that identify in various ways and identify themselves as victims and as good and virtuous because they're victims, as opposed to other groups who are oppressors. And so what we've got is a kind of fight for power all the time. We've also got a complete collapse of moral reasoning and reasoning itself. We, the West, told ourselves, or rather our intellectual elites told us decades ago, there was no such thing as objective truth. Anyone who believed in objective truth was basically a cretin. It was so unsophisticated. Anybody with any intelligence knew that there was only opinion and everything was relative. What I feel is what is. As Oprah famously said, I have my truth, you have your truth.
That's Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey, yes.
Just for anyone. Is it opera? I thought Oprah.
Well, it's probably Oprah. I don't know. I probably get these things wrong.
Yeah, we have our own truths about the pronunciation.
Well, yes, we can all have our own morally relativist pronunciation. And what I feel trumps any facts, because feelings, the subjective trumps the objective. Now, if you have no truth, you have no lies. If there's no truth, you can't have lies. So you don't know the difference between truth and lies. Indeed, there can be no difference between truth and lies. Everything's a matter of opinion. So you have a society which has become very gullible to lies, very credulous to lies. And if you have no truth and you don't know the difference between truth and lies, you can't have reason. And if you can't have reason, you can't have rationality. And I think we have destroyed rationality. So, it's a paradox. We're such a rational society, apparently, that we have basically declared God dead and religion is stupid. And there's no such thing as objective truth, and people who believe in that are cretins. We're so rational that we've got rid of rationality completely, because you can't have rationality without truth. And people are believing all kinds of extraordinary things. I mean, the idea that religious belief has gone out the window and in its place has come, the high moral ground of the intellect. I mean, one of the fastest growing things at the moment is witchcraft. People are becoming pagan and they're worshipping inanimate objects. And they're into all kinds of stuff like parapsychology, Eastern religions, which are, I'm sure people can live exactly as they want to live, but the idea that that's rational is the opposite of the truth. So all these things, conscience, reason, justice, to me, these are the core, or three of the most important core values of what we call Western civilization, which I think is actually civilization. These are civilized values. And I think they've all been undermined to the point of extinction. The question is, and this is what I try and grapple with in my book, is it a done deal? Is it now all over? Is the West just going off the edge of the cultural cliff? And many people think it is. People think it's gone far too far. We've destroyed the traditional family. We've destroyed the education system as a means of transmitting the culture because we've told ourselves the culture is too awful to be transmitted. We've destroyed the idea of the nation. So we've destroyed what is basically is the essential building blocks of the culture. So there's no going back. Well, I think there's always going back. I think it's not over till it's over. I draw great comfort from the fact that there are millions and millions of people who self-evidently, demonstrably, are voting, in a way, politically voting, against an entire political establishment. This is across Britain and Europe, against an entire political establishment which has connived at all this. And we may not like who is being thrown up in terms of political leadership, but that's not the point. There is this, what's bringing them to power is this resistance among millions of people. So that gives me great heart. And also, as I try and say in the book, I think a lot of people are just waiting for the right kind of leadership to fill a kind of spiritual void and a spiritual vacuum. And people are unhappy. We have a record rates of mental, psychological distress, especially among young people. And to me, a lot of that is to do with meaninglessness, the feeling that, we are kind of random specks in the universe whirling through an infinite nothing. And that's pretty depressing.
Yeah.
And people don't have a sense of purpose. They don't have challenges that mean that they have to overcome them, which is what gives us a sense of purpose. And so on and so on. And so actually,